Hi, in this episode I'll be introducing MongoMapper along with the Rails. And although this is the last episode in the introduction series, it will be rather short. Why? As you can see from this post, you'll see that MongoMapper is really simple. And here is the URL. And here's a bit of warning. I'm not a big fan of ORM, that includes active record, so I might inject some of my opinions here and there. So it's just a bit of a heads up that you could just ignore those comments. In order to install MongoMapper gem, you need to have the latest gem cutter. So let's go ahead and do this. Once you have the gem cutter installed, and you need to tumble it. And I love saying that. And naturally, next thing that you need to do is install MongoMapper. Now, if you look at the if you do the search on the gem search, you'll see a whole bunch of other MongoMapper. Just make sure that you install the one that I specify here. Now let's go ahead and create the Rails application, and we'll call it a Mongo demo. The first thing we are going to do is actually go into the config directory and set up our application to use Mongo. I'll first create the configuration file in form of YAML, just like a database.yaml, but instead it will be MongoDB YAML. And in the file itself, it will be YAML file, just like a database YAML. So I'll have a development and specify the server and the database that it will be using, in this case, YASI. And of course, I will need to have a test environment and a production environment. And it will work just like the database YAML. Only other thing that we'll need to add is actually initializer that will look at this file and set up the configuration accordingly. I'll create the initializer in initializers directory under name mongodb.rb, and this is actually a little Ruby program that will load and instantiate the MongoDB connection. What I'll do here is the config file will look at the YAML file that we created, and if the file exists, it will load it, and it will pull out the configuration for particular environment. And if the configuration for the environment exists, and only thing they will do is create the MongoMapper connection using our Mongo driver that we learned about in my previous screencast. According to the blog post and the documentations, they recommend that I do it somewhere else. But however, I need to use a MongoDB on different versions of Rails, and I just found that the initializer to work across the different versions and just works well. And that's the reason why I prefer this method. Before we get started working on our Rails app, we need to start our MongoDB. So let's go ahead and do that and move it out of the way. And let's generate our YASI's controller. It's a simple one. And let's go ahead and create our models. I'll be creating two models. One YASI itself, and the other one will be a Mongo base model, which everything that actually Mongo models will inherit from. Okay, here's my application. The only thing that I need to add is the view, which will be index view. So let me go ahead and do that. And refresh it. Let's first work on the Mongo base. And this is the model that everything that uses MongoDB will be inherited from. And the only thing that it does is that it includes a MongoMapper document. Unlike Active Record, MongoMapper gem is mixed-in module. Therefore, I believe it takes up less resources than Active Record does. Now let's go ahead and create our YASI model, which inherits from Mongo base. In order to create fields, all we have to do is call on key method and then pass in the name of the field and the type. And this required, what I'll do is I'll explain it a little bit later. As you can see, it works just like the active record and a migration. It's just that you don't have to run migration with MongoDB. What's nice is that first time you actually use it, it will do all the creation that you need to do. So there's no migration mess that you have to deal with. It's really nice. And although it's not complete, you get all the method of active record in terms of validation. As you can see, it validates the presence of description, works just like the active record. And one of the shortcut that you have is when I did the title, required true is the same as validates the presence of. It's just a shortcut. Okay, let's look at the controller. As you can see, I have a simple index action, and only thing that does is pulls out all the YASIs. And as you can see by the method, what I do is just call all method from the YASI, and it works just like the active record. And the whole purpose behind the MongoMapper is that it gives us a convenient way for us to use MongoDB using the tools that we are familiar with. So for here, right now on index, I'm doing yasi.all, but if I want to do a search, then I could do yasi.find and pass along the criteria just like the active record, and it will do that. And here's a simple view that I create to demonstrate the index action. And as you can see, you don't see any difference between this and any other normal Rails app. Now let's fire up the application and see what it looks like. As expected, when I call on the index action on YASI's controller, I get no YASI here message. Let's create a YASI from our console and see what it looks like. Okay, let's fire up the console and let's create an instance of YASI and let's populate the field. You always need to be aware of that MongoMapper works exactly like the active record. So even if you instantiate and populate it, unless you call save method on it, it's not saved. And other behaviors are just the same. And call on the save method, and when we refresh the browser, as you can see, now we have a YASI. And other operations works exactly the same as active record. So if you call the destroy method on it and refresh the browser, as you can see, there's no YASI here message. Okay, now let's take a look at the data from the command line. And if you look at the DBS, you see YASI, and we'll use that database. And take a look at the collections. Notice that it says Mongo bases, and if you look at it, that's where our data is. Issues like this and more will be covered in my RubyHead screencast shorts, and you can find those at blog.rubyhead.com. This effectively concludes the series on the introduction to MongoDB, and I'd like to thank you for all the positive feedback that you've given me. It all makes it worthwhile. In the future, if you like, I like to cover more advanced and real-world examples in the screencast. I always keep my eyes open on the user requests, so please drop a line and give me any suggestion on what topics I'll be covered, and I'll do so. Thank you.
Wonderful.
Bravo!
I loved that.
Oh, it was great.
Well, it was pretty good.
Well, it wasn't bad.
Well, there were parts of it that weren't very good, though.
It could have been a lot better.
I didn't really like it.
It was pretty terrible.
It was bad.
It was awful.
It was terrible.
Get him away!
Hey, boo!
Boo!